a group of older and long-term members of Congress came hustling up to me and said, "Who do you think you are voting against Iron Dome?"
We've got an amazing interview for you guys now. Marie Newman, she was representative for Illinois' 3rd District and was taken out of Congress by the Israeli lobby. That's my summary of it, but we're gonna have Marie on to tell us what she thinks about what happened. So welcome to the show, Marie.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So you were just Democrat, progressive, and fought for economic populism, and you actually passed a lot of bills. So first of all, I find that amazing. So tell us about your one term in Congress and what you were able to accomplish, because it's going to be relevant to all of the other stories.
You know, I'm so proud of my team. I had a great team. My legislative team, my operations staff, everybody was great, right? So we really worked like a well-oiled machine in a lot of ways. And as a result of that, we were able to get a lot done legislatively, but also in the community. I would say that in Illinois 3, the old Illinois 3 district, we got just as much done in the community as we did legislatively. While we passed 6 bills through the House, I was lucky enough to have 2 bills signed into law by President Biden. I think that if I had to choose, that work made me very, very proud of my staff. But the community work we did during COVID to fill in the gaps of service, there was nowhere to go, and we filled in some gaps, is probably what I'm most proud of.
So I hear you on that, but everybody does constituent services. Not everybody gets 6 bills passed in the House and 2 signed into law. And especially at a time when Democrats are desperate for a leader with a plan and leadership just can't seem to find one. Tell us how you actually made plans to get those bills passed.
You know, the formula is very simple. When I was campaigning, I did 343 meet and greets in 360 days. And it was real simple, that formula. When you walk in the room, whether it's a garage, a house, someone's front stoop, sit down with a bunch of neighbors, you ask them, what can I do for you? What's wrong? What are your problems? And then you shut your pie hole and take notes. And then you take those notes and then you turn them into legislation. And then you work real hard to get them passed by actually talking to people, including Republicans, and getting that work done, and really focusing on that. And that seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah, and you were allowed to do that because you're just Democrat, so you didn't take any corporate PAC money. So Representative Newman, does the corporate PAC money, in your opinion, or any of the PAC money, prevent Congress people on both sides from doing the right thing from time to time, let's say, to be generous?
Yeah, I'll just say it bluntly, Cenk. The reason we don't have Medicare for all is because of corporate PAC money. The reason we don't have affordable drugs is because of corporate PAC money. The reason we don't have transformative climate change actions and policy is because of big oil money. The reason that we don't have parental leave is because of big oil. The reason we don't have wage bills done, which we should have gotten done 10 years ago, is because of big money in politics, namely super PACs and corporate PACs. So it is very clear, it's not a maybe kind of sort of thing. It is just a through line that folks that take corporate PAC money do not initiate bills or support bills in any of those policy areas I just mentioned.
How obsessed are the people in Congress with those donations, and how their votes in Congress will affect those donations?
Oh, I think obsessed is an apt term. I really do, because on average, a member of Congress, once they get elected, has to spend 4 hours of what they call call time, which is dialing for dollars effectively, almost every day, the entire time they're there. So if you can imagine, if we didn't have to call for money 24/7 and didn't have corporate PAC money interfering in super PACs and taking people out of Congress that should still be there just because they're either populist or economically progressive or whatever it might be, right? We would have an amazing Congress right now, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I get frustrated by it. I don't know if you do, that mainstream media, meanwhile, never talks about PAC money and never talks about donors.
It is curious. I mean, well, remember, media companies have PACs too. So I guess it's not so surprising, right?
Yeah, and most of the money in politics goes to ads in mainstream media. So while your experience in Congress was that the people in Congress were absolutely obsessed with the donations, mainstream media reporters say they're not relevant at all. They're not relevant in the legislation, and they shouldn't even report on them, whether it's in elections or in legislation. It's comical. It's comical.
It's shamefully wrong too, because there are, so 89% of Congress takes corporate PAC money. 87% is owned by AIPAC and the pro-Israel lobby, Democratic Majority for Israel, United Democracy Project, and there's like 7 other faux ones out there and affiliate groups, right? The crypto PACs, all of those. So they're owned. They should wear T-shirts that have like a sponsor name on them and say which corporate PACs. It's like a sports team.
Yeah. So Democrats say that of Republicans. Republicans say that of Democrats. Is it true of both parties?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, slightly worse in the Republican side, but Democrats literally. I mean, it is very significant. They take hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions. Folks in leadership take millions of dollars every year in corporate PAC money.
Yeah, so now they claim that they're principled and support incumbents. Then they don't mind if you're corporate or progressive or anything along those lines. When you were running for re-election, did you feel a lot of support from the establishment Democratic Party?
No, this is where the Democrats get it wrong, right? Is that they say they support incumbents, but if we go in the Wayback Machine, Cenk, when primaries were initiated, that's 120, 130 years ago when they came to fruition. The idea was, let's send our best and our brightest. So we're gonna have a primary from each party, right? And what that'll allow us to do is to vet these people and make sure that they are really representing our values. So if you're in the business like the DNC or the RNC is of thwarting that and deciding who the winners and losers are before you even get to the primary, and then in the primary make sure whatever you want to have happen, the most conservative person wins, that's really problematic. So I think against all odds in 2020, I won because they sure weren't being supportive of me. But in 2022, even though I was an incumbent, it was incumbent on incumbent, I wasn't supported because I was one of those populist progressives that believed in an economic platform that really supported everybody's every day. Whether it is childcare for all, equity for all, higher wages, parental leave, all of those things that we all strongly believe in, and the entire party should believe in. But and then obviously the pro-Israel lobby didn't enjoy my positions because I was progressive on Israel and Palestine. So when they want you out, they want you out.
So I'm going to get to how much they spend against you in a minute, but there's an amazing story of your votes in Congress and some of the consequences. So you voted for Iron Dome, which makes sense. I agree with that. It protects innocent Israeli civilians. I wish all countries had one. I wish that the Palestinians had an Iron Dome. I know in Congress that's laughable. Of course, the Palestinians are meant to be slaughtered, but overall, no problem with Iron Dome, and you vote yes for that. Then
no, I actually voted against Iron Dome.
Oh, okay.
This is complicated. Let me just do a quick translation from some Congress speak. So in 2021, in the fall of 2021, we had 2 bills that we were going to vote on. First is the NDAA, which is the defense bill, and that funds all of our partners across the world, all the countries. Israel is among them, and we gave them money for the Iron Dome inside that large bill called the NDAA. Then Israel, several weeks later, came back and said, "Hey, we've got a batteries problem with our Iron Dome." And again, Iron Dome basically is a defensive weapon. It's not bad, right? It saves lives, and we want everybody's lives to be saved. So I didn't have an issue with that, but it was the middle of COVID, Cenk, and I pulled my entire district to make sure I was making, because if nothing else, my number one job is to vote the district, right? And so I made sure I was consistent. And I asked my entire district, representation from all parts and all sectors, and they all said almost universally, like 9 out of 10 folks said, hey, we do not want to give an additional amount of money to Israel because it's the middle of COVID and we can use that money here. And whether it was labor unions or there were faith groups that came to me, gun resistance groups, moms and dads, neighbors, everybody, right? Rank and file, they all said the same thing: do not vote for Iron Dome, and I didn't. And that was the first time I knew that, wow, they were really going to come after me. They being conservative Democrats, they were going to take me down for sure.
So let me get this part of the story right. So the NDAA, that's the defense budget, basically. You vote yes.
Yes.
Iron Dome is in the defense budget, so there right. You are. Okay. So then they come back for money for batteries. How much did the so-called batteries cost on top of what they've already got?
Yeah, and you likely know this, Cenk, but we fund Israel more than any other country on the planet for defense systems, right? So we fully funded them. They came back and asked for more money for these batteries for the Iron Dome, and I said no, because for the reason that I just cited. And so it was, I was one of 9 people in Congress that voted against it, and it was like I had committed mortal murder in the middle of the floor. That was not well liked.
Yeah, so Israel gets their normal money, plus they get Iron Dome, plus they'd like batteries. But the batteries were probably what, 20 or 40 bucks from Costco or something. How much were the batteries? Did they? This is their third layer of ass now.
Yeah, you're being funny, but I did do a lot of research on what batteries cost for this thing, and it was nowhere near what they were asking. So your joke is well put. Yeah.
Yeah, billions. They wanted billions more for batteries. Okay. No, I look, I don't believe. I think they're just. This is my opinion, not Marie Newman's. I think they're just robbing us over and over and over again. America has given $311 billion adjusted for inflation to Israel. I don't know when we're gonna get that money back. Of course, I know we're never gonna get it back. Okay, so you vote against the third time that they asked for billions in batteries for Iron Dome. What happens to you next on the floor of the House?
So that right after we placed that vote, like I said, I was one of 9. A group of older and long-term members of Congress came hustling up to me and said, "Who do you think you are voting against Iron Dome?" And I said, I was like, "Are you kidding me with this?" Like, it was a little bit like, because it was like the bully group on the playground, right? And I was like, "Are you kidding me with this?" And I had, members of Congress sitting next to me, and I was kind of laughing, and I said, "I know you're emotional right now." And I will tell you, like, I was forgiving because they were very threatening to me, but they were being emotional because it was known that this was their one issue. Like, this is the only issue that they cared about in life or in their district, right? Is protecting Israel. So I was trying to be empathetic to that and explained the process I just explained. I talked to everybody. I talked, my district is very clear to me. They would like me to vote against this, and I did, and explained the process. And they said, "Well, guess what? You just lost all of your support on the North Shore, meaning, and what that equates to is that anybody that is very far to the right, pro-Israel." And so they threatened my fundraising right on the House floor, which is an ethics violation, by the way. I chose not to put a complaint in because it was an emotional day and I didn't want to be incredibly unkind, but it was wrong.
So they threatened your money, and did they actually get people to stop contributing to you?
Yeah, they were very effective. Kudos to them. They were highly effective. I immediately started losing campaign money. Now, on one hand, I was okay with that because if you were only supporting me because you thought that I was far to the right on pro-Israel, I don't want your money, right? Like, I was very clear on that, and I didn't even feel badly about that. But the fact that they could threaten me and hold that, we should get money out of politics, then people can't use this lever. And guess what? Then everybody just votes their district and not their donors. And that's what the moral of the story is that this group only believes in their donors and only votes the way their donors want to, which are these folks that are far to the right on the Israel-Palestine issue. And I voted my district, and that's what we need more of, folks that actually will vote their district and not their donors.
It's like they're trying to prove an anti-Semitic trope, right? where they come in and they go, okay, now we're gonna threaten your money and you're gonna be canceled and you're not gonna have any money if you oppose Israel. And then they deliver on that threat. Okay, that's just terrible. It's terrible for America. By the way, it's terrible for Jewish Americans. So that they're doing these kind of heinous things.
My husband is a Jewish American, and obviously a family are, and they were horrified by that, right? And they're folks that want everybody to be safe, and they want Israel and Palestine to both to be free and happy and prosperous, right? As I do, and so that story really was offensive to everybody.
Yeah. So was that just Republicans or Republicans and Democrats?
No, that was just Democrats.
Just Democrats. Interesting. Yeah. How many of them were there?
I think there were 3 or 4. One kind of cowered in the background, and then the other 3 they happened to be very, very tall men, and so they were a little ominous. But
So 4 thugs come up to you from your own party and say, since you voted against Israel's 3rd demand for so-called billions of dollars in batteries, we're gonna make sure you lose and we're gonna stop all your funding. That's great. I don't know if you are willing to name names. Have you mentioned who they are?
I tell this story in my book for that reason, and what I make a policy in my most recent book, A Life Made from Scratch, is we can be candid and kind and talk about the behavior and the process and do better, right? We don't need to humiliate anyone. I have been humiliated in the past, and people have lied about me vigorously, and I have forgiven everybody. But I am not going to repay in kind and humiliate someone else. But it is important to note the behavior is wrong.
Yeah, Marie, you're a much better person than I am. So I think that those folks are evil, and plus I think they're un-American. I think they should be removed from Congress because they don't serve America; they serve a foreign country. So okay, then they take away your funding, and they deliver on that threat. How much money was spent against you by AIPAC and affiliated groups?
It's hard to track because they have so many groups that they hide inside of groups. I'll give you a good example, Cenk, you likely know this, is that AIPAC money flows down, and they're not necessarily, I think they now have a federal PAC, but in reality, their members can give money to all these affiliate PACs that become super PACs later. So I'll give you a couple of examples of affiliate PACs. So Democratic Majority for Israel, I think, spent like $1 million on me. And then 314 Science, which is, you'd think is, it's a science PAC, right? It's funded by AIPAC. And then there are several other PACs out there that are smaller, United Democracy Project and several others. And I think all collectively between those PACs that were fed by AIPAC and Democratic Majority for Israel, which is called DMFI frequently, I think it was right around 2 million. So it was like a 4-to-1 situation. And then with the opponent, I think all total they outspent me like 6-to-1.
Because the crypto bros came in and spent money against you as well, right?
They're fun, yeah. And by the way, they're big funders of AIPAC as well, so.
Okay, great. The crypto guys with their meme coins and their scams have partnered up with Israel to make sure that our representatives don't represent us at all. They just represent corporate donors in foreign countries. Well, this is exciting. So you get outspent 6-to-1, Marie. And of course, that makes it an unwinnable race. So as we see you being outspent in that way, we see Nina Turner, who had a 35-point lead, lose that lead after they spend $4 million against her in Cleveland. Again, Democratic majority for Israel, not for Cleveland, not for Illinois, but for Israel. And then you have Andy Levin in Michigan, and they spent $4 million against him.
So they spent that money against a synagogue president.
Yeah,
the irony there is palpable.
Yeah, so Representative Levin is a president of a synagogue. Your husband is Jewish. It doesn't matter. This isn't about Jews or Christians or Muslims. This is about a foreign government that wants to control our government. And so now if you say that in national media, you'll get banned, right? And it's unacceptable to say things that are absolutely true and provable. How much was spent in those races by those groups is clear and on the record. Even without the dark money, the spending was in the millions in all those races. Also Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and all those races. So the media says, the American media says that no, it's offensive to even suggest that the Israeli lobby controls members of Congress and that they have heavy influence in how they vote. Is your experience that that is preposterous and that of course they have enormous influence on how a majority of our Congress votes on these issues?
Oh, I think that so let me just share, I have personal knowledge of early days, AIPAC coming to me, and they were angry at me right away because I wouldn't talk to them because I knew their reputation and their model. They go to candidates early days in their early campaign and start to bully them right away and say, oh, this is really the policy that you should really support. And they start out pretty nice and they get more forceful and more forceful. And then they are dangling, well, you can have this money if you use these talking points, right? And many candidates fall for that, right? And I didn't, and they held that. So this has been, in my book, I call it, they're like a scorned boyfriend that is a little cray-cray. So in 2018, they were very angry with me because I wouldn't work with them. In 2020, they put a lot of money out in 2018 against me. I think that was in the hundreds of thousands. In 2020, they probably spent $1.5 million on me. And then 2022, they finally took me down. Those are their terms. And they hang on to a grudge like worse than anyone I can imagine.
So these thugs that work for a foreign government control 87% of the members of Congress, openly bully people on the floor of the House and otherwise, and say we will spend an enormous amount of money to make sure you're defeated if you don't support Israel. And I'm sure that the New York Times and CNN and Washington Post have done enormous exposés about this based on your experience, right?
No, they were not interested in that story. I think, well, there were some independent outlets that, Drop Site News and Ryan Grimm at The Intercept and others, you covered it. There are many independent outlets that covered it. I'm trying to remember if a mainstream media or legacy media actually ever covered it. I think the Sun-Times did lightly in Chicago here, but no one with any vigor or any investigation. I would even help reporters understand this is how you look up the FEC filing, this is how you look up at their legislative record, and you can connect the dots very easily, right? And no one has taken that task.
That's interesting because I thought the mantra of political reporting was follow the money. But when you hand it to them on a silver platter, they're like, no, I don't want to know about the money. I don't want to know about the money. So, all right, well, mainstream media, that's a different animal. And they could try to explain for themselves why they don't want to expose a foreign government controlling us. I don't know if that they're anyway, that's their business. If they don't want to do news and they don't want to do journalism, at least New York Times, CNN, etc., they have no interest in telling you how Congress actually works. But Marie's telling you right now. All right, so one more thing about that. You said they would give you talking points. Is that common for the handlers, Israel's handlers, to give you talking points for if you're in Congress?
And it's not just AIPAC, to be clear, is that talking points are given to members of Congress by lobbyists at corporate PACs. They are, regardless of whatever foreign lobby it might be, you're given talking points. This is a very standard and normal thing. That in and of itself is not horrifying. What is horrifying is when you are required to stick to those or you won't get your money. And that is a very clear through line, Cenk. And that's why even folks that say that they're climate hawks in Congress today, never put together anything transformative. I mean, AOC has and a few others have put together some big bills. Like I get it, like although hers was a resolution, but they have tried, right? But there are other folks in Congress that call themselves climate hawks, and then you never see them even as much as put forth a bill that amends a bad bill or something smaller, right? And the reason is because these climate hawks in Congress take money from big oil. And this was one example.
It's, oh God. it's so painful to see it confirmed by a person who was actually in Congress. So I know it, I wrote a whole book about it, right? And it's not just about Israel, guys. I don't want people to take the wrong idea. Look at the crypto guys do it, the drug companies do it.
Oh, drug, pharma, big oil, healthcare, financials, big banks, all of them do the same thing. It's the same, talking points. If you stick to these talking points, you get tons of money. If you don't, we can't help you. It's the same rinse, wash, repeat.
I mean, if you work at the New York Times, you should be mortified and retire in deep shame that you never covered these giant stories. And this is not just Marie Newman or just Democrats. Mo Brooks, a Republican from Alabama, said on the campaign trail, on tape, we covered it, that you need $1 million to be the head of a committee and that you can't get it from the average citizen. So you have to take it from the industry you're covering, as long as you promise not to regulate them and do as you're told. So the only way you can get a committee chairmanship is if you get bribed by the people you're supposed to be regulating to make sure you don't regulate them. And then yet the New York Times can't find a way to cover it. The paper of record.
And what I will say in fairness, there may have been an expose in this space, the money of politics over time. I don't remember seeing it. It may have happened, whether it was Washington Post, New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah, it didn't happen, Marie.
Yeah,
okay, I could report to you.
I've never seen it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I've never seen it. But by virtue of the fact that I haven't seen it, that's suspect.
Yeah, and so look, New York Times will say, oh no, what do you mean? We did 3 stories over the course of 20 years that kind of vaguely talked about money in politics. No, people saying, here's your talking point, repeat this like my trained pet, and you will get the money. If you don't, we'll spend the money against you and make sure you're eliminated. This is Pablo Escobar stuff. It is a matter of course. They do it to Democrats and Republicans. And no, the New York Times did not cover your particular story, neither did the Washington Post. They did not cover the Mo Brooks story. I know because I knew we had the person on who broke the story, and I asked her, holy cow, nice job on getting this tape. It's a confession on tape. And mainstream media told her, oh, everybody already knows that. How do they know it if you never reported it, you liars? Anyway.
We even had a couple of stringer reporters at smaller publications come to us with a story, and I tried to help them. And the story was this, is that in 2018 and 2020, there was a subcommittee assigned to regulate the crypto industry and digital currency, right? And there were 7 or 8 of them on this subcommittee. They never even met, but yet they took crypto money. They never even met.
So they're not even bothering. You know why? What do they need to meet for? They don't know anything about crypto. They just know that the crypto guys are gonna give them a bucket of money, and then they're gonna give them a talking point. And then those corporate robots will then read those talking points and go, yes, I am a big believer in crypto. I have been programmed to believe in crypto. God, this is disgusting.
This is even funny, just to put a quick button on that, is those same members of Congress that were on the subcommittee, and some of them are gone now, but some of them are still there. They now are big anti-crypto folks. Like they've completely turned tail because they found out, oh wow, wildly unpopular.
Okay, right. Or some of the crypto guys went bankrupt, and since they're not getting their bribes anymore, okay, then all of a sudden their actual position turns out to be anti-crypto, but they were pretending to be pro-crypto when they were being bribed. In a sense, even worse. No. Right. All right, Marie. Last thing. Look, things are bleak. There's not a lot of hope out there. All right. Any advice for if Democratic leadership were to be honest? Let's just grant that for a second. If they were, what would you tell them to do now?
I think, first of all, let me just say, I do have hope. I want to be clear. This is a doable thing, folks. We can turn this bus around. We see leaders emerging. Do I think that the leaders that have the more standard leadership titles right now are doing a bang up job? I just am not seeing it. Maybe they're doing it, but I'm just not seeing it, right? So I'll make that statement. But I am seeing emerging leaders that are doing a great job. Obviously AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Chris Murphy in the Senate, Ro Khanna is all over this country doing town halls and learning what people really want. And the list goes on. There's probably somewhere around 10 of them that are really kind of crushing it out there. And there are emerging newer, younger leaders, right? So we should be hopeful and supportive of those folks. we're seeing polling change, right? I just saw the latest CNN poll combined with the New York Times poll from a few weeks ago. We're seeing Trump's crumbling support. What we're not seeing yet, although in this CNN poll today, we're seeing Democratic polls going up a little bit, the generic ballot. So that's good news. But what we need is bold, transformative leadership with a bold idea. And we're not seeing that right now. And we can continue to ask our leadership for that, or we can ask these emerging leaders to just run with it and take it. Sometimes you just have to take the reins in leadership and run.
Yeah, so I mean, you're absolutely right. We literally have Operation Hope at TYT because we believe in hope. And Ro Khanna did something brilliant the other day when he took Trump's executive order that Trump knew would get blocked by the courts that lowers drug prices, that says, why don't we have the same drug prices as other countries? And he turned it into a bill with Republican co-sponsors.
I loved that, I saw that.
Yeah, so hey, let's call their bluff. Okay, so right. We want lower drug prices. By the way, Republican voters want lower drug prices.
Everyone does.
Yes, everyone except the deeply corrupt Congress that took their talking points from Big Pharma and betrayed all of their voters, which is a great, overwhelming majority of Republicans and Democrats in the House and in the Senate. So, I mean, look, last thing on that, Marie. I mean, as you look at that, what is blocking leadership from doing, let's say here, let's take the example that I love, paid family leave. Sitting there at 84% popularity, even 74% of Republicans want it. Yet they say, well, I'm so incompetent, I don't know how to pass a bill at 84%. Do you believe them? Or do you think, no, their donors told them, shut up and don't do any of your economic policies?
It's three groups are preventing progress on the Democratic side. In addition to the fact that we have, we're in the minority, that certainly is a real fact, right? But there's three groups that are really pushing our Democratic leadership to roll over and not do anything. It's donors, like you cited, for sure. It is also conservative Democrats always get their way, even when they're terribly wrong. Consultants are constantly saying, well, this polls well, that doesn't poll well. And then, just in general, the corporate PAC community, they're being, the Democratic leadership is being threatened every day. So I have to say, there's something of the magical about the ethos of a union in that when you stand in solidarity and everybody stands up against a bully, corporate PACs, big owners, the establishment, guess what happens? Numbers are powerful, and if you stand up to them, they have to back down. So what I wish our leadership would do now is understand that the voters are unified right now. They understand we want parental leave, higher wages. We want to make sure that the air is clean and all of those things, right? They're unified. Even most Democrats, independents have swayed dramatically in the last couple months back to being full-on independents. But what Democrats have to do is talk to voters, get to all 50 states, and understand what they really want. And equal to that, once they learn that, don't throw anybody under the bus. It's Team America is everybody in and nobody out.
Yes, and we could actually win over almost all those independent voters because the actual Democratic policies are very, very popular. It's just they choose not to do them. And it's not just when they're in the minority. In first 2 years of Biden, all paths were cleared. You had the House, the Senate, the White House. And if you can't pass a bill that's sitting at 84%, that means you don't want to pass that bill.
If I can have just a couple more seconds, I do want to share this because your readers or your viewers need to know this. In the last 24 hours of Build Back Better, before we signed off on the bill that we ultimately passed, universal child care was in there. Parental leave was in there. Immigration reform was in there. And it got yanked by 9 members of Congress led by Josh Gottheimer because his donors didn't like those 3 items. So let's be clear in what happens in Congress.
Yeah, Josh Gottheimer is one of the worst representatives I have ever covered in quarter century of covering politics. He is deeply corrupt and works for any donor that'll come by and give him money. He works for foreign government. He works for corporations. And so those 9 Democrats led by Gottheimer made sure that you didn't have paid family leave, that your children were not taken care of, but their donors were. So that's who these politicians are. Marie, it was a minor miracle that you got into Congress and got to report back on what actually happens. Thank you for doing that. I think you're a bit of a hero for doing that, and we appreciate you deeply.
Well, I appreciate what you all do every day. Independent media is our future. And so keep on doing all of the amazing reporting and investigative work.
All right, Representative Marie Newman, thank you for joining us on the Young Turks. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.